For the longest time, a company's report card had just one grade on it: profits. But what if you could see the whole picture? Well, that's exactly what's happening in India. A brand new, mandatory report is pulling back the curtain, forcing companies to show their real impact. And it's all about something called the BRSR. You know, for decades, if you asked how's a company doing, the answer was pretty simple, right? Just look at the bottom line. But things are changing. Now, pretty much everyone, investors, customers, even their own employees, they're asking for more. They want to know, hey, is this company actually a good corporate citizen? Are they treating people and the planet with respect? And that's exactly the question this new framework is designed to answer.
All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll break down what this new report card, the BSRR, actually is. Then, we'll get into the 9 principles that are its foundation. We'll peek inside the framework itself, see how the rules are getting stricter, and wrap it all up with why this is such a huge deal for everyone.
Okay, let's dive right in. First things first, what is the BSRS?
Okay, so the BSRS stands for Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. A bit of a mouthful, right? But what it really is a single, standardized way for companies to report on stuff that isn't just about profits. It comes from SEBI, India's big market regulator, and it's all about disclosing performance on environmental, social, and governance metrics. You've probably heard the term ESG. And the key thing here, this isn't optional. It's a straight-up rule.
And we're not just talking about a few companies here. This is huge. Since the 2022-23 financial year, this report has been mandatory for the top 1,000 listed companies in India based on their market cap. Think about that. In one move, you've got this massive wave of transparency washing over the entire market.
But, a report like this can't just be about ticking boxes. It has to have a real philosophy behind it, right? So let's get into the ethical foundation of the BSRS.
The BSRS is actually built on something called the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct, or NGRBC. These guidelines lay out 9 core principles for how a business should act responsibly. You can think of these principles as the moral compass for the entire report. They're what gives it meaning.
So let's make this a little more concrete. Take Principle 3, which is all about employee well-being. A great example is Hindustan Unilever's Shakti initiative. This program doesn't just pay fair wages, it actually empowers rural women, turning them into distributors. We're talking about creating thousands of livelihoods. That's what these principles look like in the real world.
Or how about Principle 6, protecting the environment? Look at a company like Mahindra & Mahindra. They're not just doing the bare minimum here. They've made a massive public commitment to become carbon neutral by 2040. This is the kind of bold, ambitious goal the BSRS is designed to bring to light.
Then you've got Principle 8, which is all about inclusive growth. The idea is that a company's success shouldn't just benefit shareholders, it should lift up the whole community. The Adani Foundation, for example, runs vocational training programs in rural and tribal areas. That's a perfect example of investing directly in a more equitable future for everyone.
Okay, so we've got the why behind the report, its whole ethical foundation. But what about the how? I mean, what does this thing actually look like? How is all this information structured? Well, it's pretty detailed. We're talking about 140 questions in total. But here's the smart part. They're split into 2 types. You've got 98 mandatory essential indicators. These are the non-negotiables, the stuff everyone has to report. But then there are 42 leadership indicators. These are voluntary, for the companies that really want to go above and beyond and prove they're leading the pack on sustainability.
And the whole report is broken down into 3 main sections, which makes a lot of sense. Section A is basically about us, who the company is, what they do. Section B gets into the nitty-gritty of their policies and processes. How are they set up to actually follow those 9 principles? And then comes Section C, and this is the big one, performance. This is where they have to lay out the cold, hard data on how they're actually doing.
But here's the thing, SEBI isn't stopping there, because let's be honest, it's one thing to report a bunch of data, it's another thing to make sure that data is actually true, and that's where things are about to get a lot more serious.
The key word here is assurance, which is basically how much you can trust the numbers. Let me give you an analogy. Limited assurance is kind of like spell checking a document. An auditor glances over it and says, yep, nothing glaringly wrong here. But reasonable assurance, well, that's a whole different ballgame. That's like a full-on forensic audit, where every single fact is checked and verified. It's a much deeper dive, and that's exactly where the system is headed.
And this is all happening incredibly fast.
Starting in the 2023-24 financial year, the top 150 companies already need that high-level reasonable assurance. But then it gets even bigger. From 2024-25, the top 250 companies have to start reporting on their entire value chain. That means their key suppliers, their distributors, the whole shebang. This is an absolute game changer. It means a company is now on the hook for the ESG performance of its partners too.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture here. Why is all this happening? What's the real point of the BRSR?
Well, there are a few really big reasons. For one, it standardizes all this ESG data, so investors can finally make real apples-to-apples comparisons. It massively boosts corporate transparency, which helps build trust. It also lines India up with global standards, making the country way more attractive for international investors who care about this stuff. And maybe most importantly, it levels the playing field, so the companies that are truly responsible can finally stand out. It's all about pushing corporate India toward a more sustainable and ethical future.
Look, this new era of transparency isn't going anywhere. And when a company's total impact, good and bad, is out there for everyone to see, the very definition of success starts to change. So the question isn't just about who's making the most money anymore. The real question is, who is being the most responsible? As this all unfolds, which companies do you think will lead the way? And which ones are going to be left behind?